Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I take a look at all of the board games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode covering the second half of March 2023. Now before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started on the games, and we're going to start with my favourite game of all time, El Grande. And I've been quite fortunate to play this game around 3 times in the last 4 to 5 weeks. So it's always good to go back and play the best games out there. And for me, this game goes from strength to strength. It's still head and shoulders above the rest as my favourite game of all time. Had a fantastic 4-player game of this with my my closest friends. And it was probably one of the closest games I've ever had, because I think there was probably about below 10 points in between the first place and last placed player. So everybody had a good chance of winning. It was quite a cool game in the way that everyone was going around there about their business. I was trying to get a lot of the second places in the region. Somebody was getting loads of chunks of points every time it came to scoring their own region, because they always had the king there, always had the highest the variable score marker that you can put there, and so they were scoring loads from one region and being sure to keep hold of that one. Someone was really going for the tower, so all different strategies, and it all kind of paid off by coming up to a really close game at the end of it. It was also quite strange in the way that the initiative cards were being used, because normally people hold their higher initiative cards just before the scoring phases in order to ensure they have the king, but that's not how the way this game worked. And it was quite interesting to see how differently it played out. But every time I play this game, I discover something new, a new wrinkle kind of unravels, and those games always just fascinate me the most. And I've played this game a ton of times now, and it still inspires me. So that is El Grande, just the best of the best, and I absolutely adore it. I've also been playing some more Trekking Through History. So this is a game that I've reviewed very recently, and I gave it quite a positive review actually, because it definitely did leave me impressed and was way better than I thought it was going to be. So this is a family weight drafting and set collection game. As you're collecting cards from this row, you're trying to build runs of them going from the early years up to more modern eras, and if you kind of break that chain, then you have to start a new run, which is going to be fewer points essentially. But at the same time, you want to be ticking off all these boxes on these itinerary sheets, go from top to bottom, getting these points as you go. It's got a very nice flow to it, easy to get to the table, it's quick, it plays in around 30 minutes. And it still has some interesting decisions there, not tons of them, but it definitely has enough to keep you engaged. And it continues to hit the table and gets requested. So I got to keep games like that around in my collection. So that is Trekking Through History, a very nice one if you're looking for a family weight board game. I've also played a solo game of Woodcraft. So if you watch my channel regularly, you might know that solo modes or solo games are not my thing. I very seldom play them, but the solo mode for Woodcraft might be one of the best renditions of a solo mode that I think I've ever played. The deck of cards that you use to kind of replicate another player's turn is absolutely fantastic. It is so easy to do the upkeep. You don't have to get distracted or lose your trail of thought when it comes to your turns or what your strategy is. So that's the kind of solo modes that I enjoy, and it lets me kind of go back and play games that I'm not really hitting the table very regularly. So it was really nice to go back to this one, because I hadn't really played it much since the since my initial review of it. I still think the game is fantastic. It's a Vladimir Suki game. He tends to have a very strong design pedigree. And I do like the way that the dice are used as resources in this one, and you have so many cool mitigation tools. Now, the solo mode actually gives you a target to aim towards in terms of the points you're trying to get. I was nowhere near that target, so I think I'm not very good at this game. I seem to be missing a trick, but I enjoy it nonetheless. I think maybe my enjoyment is waning a little bit from what my initial impressions were, and I think a big part of that is because my gaming group aren't as keen on it as I am, which obviously has an effect on me, because I don't want to force them to play games they don't want to. But still, a really strong design, that is Woodcraft. I also played a 2-player game of Witchstone. So I played a friend's copy of this. This is a game that came out a year or two ago, a Reiner Knizia game which has this kind of tile laying effect where you want to be getting these symbols in big as groups as possible to get stronger actions of that type. And all these different actions are kind of little mini games as you're collecting points on this little pentagram, you're building these little routes with these witches, climbing up this wand to get points as you go in different ways. Again, another game that has quite a amount of bite to it, but it is only around 45 minutes to play at 2 players, which is really nice. And the decisions are there. I do think that there's some things in the game that I'm not too keen on. Like, for example, there's some broken combos where you can spam a certain action and then fly up that wand and then get a huge multiplier, which definitely did swing the game on our game that we played, and it kind of left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. So this one has waned a little bit for me as well. I don't have it in my own collection anymore, but I do have access to it. I still like it. I think it's probably better at that 3-player mark. But still, a solid deck game, and it is fun at least. So that's Witchstone. I also played a 2-player game of Next Station London. Sorry. So this is a nice little flip and right style game as you're building up these little subway lines in London, trying to hit more spots in different grids as well as multiply them by the times you hit these stations in one grid. And you're also getting points by crossing the little River Thames here. And there's also public objectives if you want to put them in. And I like the way that the game becomes quite restrictive as you go, because each round you draw a new line with a new colour, and they're not allowed to cross through each other. So nice little filler game, one that kind of flew under the radar last year. And there is a new version of this coming out this year. I think it's called Next Station Tokyo. So I'm quite intrigued to see what that one does. But I actually like this one. I think it's a nice little filler game to end a games day on, which is what I did. So that is Next Station London. I also played a 2-player game of Aqua Sphere. So really happy to get Aqua Sphere back to the table. And I made a kind of an effort to get that one back because I was itching to play it. So this is one of the overlooked Stefan Feld games. It's like a programming game where you have to program your actions before you actually take them. And then what you're doing is you're moving your player piece around this circular board, kind of fighting off these octopods, which will give you points. You are collecting cards to give you engine building benefits. You are putting these submarines down to score points, and the earlier you get them down, the more points you get. Loads of cool things going on here. It definitely feels like a Feld game, but at the same time it feels quite unlike anything else out there because of that programming aspect of the game where you have to think before you act, I suppose. And sometimes because of the way the orientation of these actions come out on this programming board, it can really put you down a path that you didn't really want to go, meaning that you have to collect these clocks to take bonus actions to do what you actually want to do. So sometimes you are a bit put in a funnel that you don't want to go down, but that's kind of one of the puzzles to overcome. You had a very close game. I think my opponent did much better because they focused on their own little player board here, where you can increase your capacity to do things, and the more letters you collect on these boards gives you kind of these set collection points at the end of the game. And I completely neglected that, which ended up costing me quite heavily. And this game has this really cool mechanism when it comes to the scoring, where I think it's for every 15-point increments, you need to collect one of these gems, and without collecting one of those gems, you are kind of stuck at that scoring point. So you can't actually do anything else until you get past that, which I think is a really cool little touch, and it kind of makes you divert from your plan a little bit more to make sure you have a gem or two in your supply so that you can continue gaining points. Aqua Sphere, fantastic Feld game, one of my favourites, brilliant fun. Also played a 4-player game of Quo Vadis, a negotiation game by Rainer Knizia. This game has really grown on me. I did like it to start with, but I'm liking it more and more. It just has this wonderful free flow to it, where every turn is so quick. You can really negotiate some cool things as you're trying to traverse up this board, collecting points as you go. But unless you get to the top senate here, you are not eligible for scoring. It just has a really nice breezy feel to it, very clean in the way it works. You only have a few actions. And this is of course the older version, but there is a newer reprint coming out called Quo Vadis, which adds a few little bells and whistles on, such as unique player powers. Now I actually like it without those player powers, but I do use one of the rules from Quo Vadis when it comes to putting these neutral pieces on the board where you can bribe them. It really does make the lower player count games better. Now 4 players is spot on for this one, but the 5 players is where it really shines. But yeah, this one, I'm just adoring it. It is so much fun. And again, it's so quick as well. And it does have those cool little moments And sometimes it makes you mull over what you've done and what deals you've negotiated, because it does put you under a lot of pressure, not only to get points, but to actually be eligible for scoring in the first place. So that is Quo Vadis. I also played a game of Ink and Gold, so a nice little push your luck game. And I think this is the first time I've actually won a game of Ink and Gold. So this one, you are just drawing cards from this deck. You're doing a simultaneous selection mechanism to stay in the cave or run from the cave and pick up all the gems that have been revealed. I think we had a very close game. A couple of the rounds were pretty much write-offs, where we revealed a couple of the same threats straight away, which kind of makes the turn go bust. And it's fine. It's quite a nice little pushy luck game. I'll never really be, I'll never really object to playing this one because it is so simple, but still pretty interesting and fun. Also played a game of Similo, which is a cooperative, almost like a Mysterium variant, as you are playing all these kind of fairy tale characters out, or characters from mythology. And then you are playing cards out to say whether the character that you're trying to get your teammates to guide towards is either similar or against the card that you've just played. And you're trying to narrow it down more and more and hopefully get the correct character at the end. So we played 3 games of this one, each person being, the clue giver. And I think we got 2 out of 3 right. And it's, it's pretty fun. It's one of those games you can play maybe a couple of times a year, because otherwise it becomes a bit too samey. But it's got a certain charm to it, and the artwork is fantastic. And the final game that I don't have the actual physical copy here of is Ethnos. So we played a 3-player game of Ethnos. I played quite a bit of this recently. I do like it. I think it's definitely got, again, another game with a nice flow. The turns are lightning fast as you're just picking up cards or playing a run of cards to get influence on the board. And all these cards come in different suits, I suppose, representing different fantasy races. And they have a unique rule assigned to them, such as climbing up separate boards, or runs being counted as stronger or weaker, depending on the race you've played. And it works well. And I definitely see why they've gone to reprint this game. Because I think there's going to be an audience for it. Now, I like it. I don't love it. I think it's decent. Probably about a 6 out of 10 for me. But again, it's one of those games where I'm not really going to object to play with it, because it does have a decent amount of game there for 45 minutes to an hour. And I think the final game that I've played is Sulla, or Scylla. I've been told it's pronounced Sulla. This one is fantastic. This is one of those games that you'll always see on kind of being traded or up for sale and things. I have no idea why that is, because I think this game is wonderful. I've had such a great time every time I've played this one. As you're going through this quite a procedural round structure, where you are kind of harnessing votes, you are acquiring new buildings to feed your workers and give you more income. You are collecting a workforce here which have multi-use systems where they'll give you more votes in certain phases, but you can also use them to build buildings, but you can't use them for both. So you have to weigh up how you're going to utilize these characters and fight off these communal threats. And the more you contribute to these threats, the more these tokens you're going to get. And then you've got this kind of commodity speculation market here, where certain tokens are going to be worth more or less points at the end of the game, depending on how that board state is manipulated. Really fun game. It's just a great experience, to be honest. And we went very different routes here. I was really struggling to feed my workers because I was not getting any of the food tiles, meaning that every round I was losing points. But I had a real stronghold on the money. I had a ton of the merchant cards and a ton of the money buildings, meaning that I could almost guarantee myself victory when it comes to the big voting phases, and you can get these kind of points by how much influence you have. So it's quite nice that we went different routes. One of my opponents got loads of these slave cards, which are great for building, and they also give you more points at the end of the game should you be able to afford to free them. So there's definitely different strategies you can go here. It's a really dynamic game. It's only a few rounds. It always feels different. And it's just one of those absolute hidden gem treats out there that if you are into those older Euros and more cleaner designs, then this is definitely one to cast your eye upon. You could probably pick it up for a very affordable price, but it feels different and very distinct to a lot of the other games out there. And one that I'm really continuing to enjoy, and will continue to do so. So that is Scylla, or Sulla, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And that's all the games that I've been playing over the last few weeks. Really enjoyed this last few weeks. I played a lot of my favourites, and I've got some games that I've been itching to get back to the table played. So yeah, it's been a really good time. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel. and check out my other videos too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.